right, we have several reports for you tonight before we go to our closed security session. Our first one, I asked Mr. Barch to give an update on 910 Ridgely Road, our new transportation building. So, Mr. Barch, I'll turn it over to you.
Sure. Good evening.
Good evening.
You will look at, you should all have a plan. Sorry, we don't have official architectural drawings on this. We did the best that we could. Anyway, it's been a work in progress, and so far so good on all the things with talking to the city, and things are going the way they should be at this point for a closing date in late March, hopefully. Laying a lot of groundwork for what we're gonna do when we get the keys to move in, because it's gonna be a process. One of the reasons we believe it's not gonna be overnight is because we continue to drive buses and we continue to have maintenance. And so my theory is though, once we start moving and they start getting this room, the people are gonna get excited, and then they're gonna wanna close the deal. I'm hoping. But anyway, just a little bit of so we are planning on how we're gonna make this move here in the spring. Anyway, if you look at the charts, the map here, the arrows in between are gonna be kind of open areas. Some of those are already. To give you some perspective, the top of the page is Haynes Lumber. And the bottom of the page is when the wind is blowing out of the west, it's gonna be really bad for that place because it's the bread. So, yeah, when we were out there the other day and it was bad.
Got a little hungry.
I mean, the good bad.
Yeah.
We need to go back to the risk management thing.
Anyway, so we're excited. If you'll notice on the lower left of your map, it's family resource, and we've been talking about the backpack foods and things. That's gonna be the very front part is gonna be where bulk of their work is being done. Hopefully we can amp this thing up, and now we can receive some deliveries and things that people want to donate, and actually have the storage and the capability of continuing to grow this program. I know Lisa's beyond excited. They were able to get, or Ms. Lowe was able to get a look at the facility, this space last week. She's very excited. So you'll see there where the transportation, where bus is going to be. That's basically where those mechanics are going to be housed. We talked several weeks ago about maybe maintenance being down in that area, but now because of some ways some things have opened up, the programming has allowed us to go to the top where the purple writing is, or it might not be purple on yours, but it's in the middle section at the top. Where you see meeting room, that's where transportation and maintenance offices will be. And that big meeting room is not too much smaller than this room right here.
It was the sanctuary part of the church.
Yes, it actually has a stage, so imagine Larry Wolford on the stage. Anyway, I've already told him he's got a spot, but anyway, be great for our transportation and maintenance team to be meeting and be able to have meetings and not be interrupting. They're really not gonna know what to do with themselves.
Right.
That room they've been in is about as big as this room for the past, 30 years. So, if you can, the transportation part, and then, I'll let Dr. Duke talk about the A corner there in the top left.
So if you look where that meeting room, the purple is, as Don said, that's all the transportation and maintenance offices. All the areas that they will be really their workspace. You'll see there's extra offices, so there's room to grow in there, there's a kitchen, all of that. If you also look at the bus, you talked about the mechanics, so we have little offices kind of all over the place, so there is still room to grow because inside the building. Directly to the right of the meeting room, that is the space that the city will be using for their offices. I think they're still having some conversation about what exactly they're gonna put in there, but part of our agreement with them and part of the funding, tell me the percentage, that 10%, that's roughly 10% of the building, so that's why they're covering 10% of the closing costs, 10% of the total fee, and all of that. Again, right now, it's much more room than we need. If you look to the left, which is in the A section, it's kind of hard to see. That's also offices and a little bit of warehouse space that currently we don't have programmed out. One thing I would like the board to consider is us actually, currently under our board policy, we cannot lease space. One of the things I would like the board to consider is possibly changing our policy to allow us to lease space to a nonprofit who has partnerships with us. Specifically, groups that may work with us on a regular basis, they work with our families, we already have established partnerships, it's clearly a nonprofit, and for us to adjust our policy to allow non-educational buildings, because we do not lease our schools, to have this for two reasons. One, we work with some really great partners who are a lot of times looking for a little additional space to use, especially with our Family Resource Center being right there. It would also let us program this very large building out to space we may not need to. I'll have follow-up conversations with the board on that, but I'm happy to answer any questions you have on that. We do have some partners that have reached out to us about the possibility of that. And we, of course, didn't want to do anything until we had this programmed out and knew completely what we actually had available. But I'm happy to answer any questions, and I'll have any follow-ups with the board as well. It would take a policy change. I want to be very clear with that.
What about the tenants that are there now? Are they all?
Yes, and that was part of the agreement from the current owner, was he had asked, and Lauren, please correct me, the current owner had worked with all the current tenants to have all of them moved out. And the current owner, as part of the agreement, was not interested in having conversations with us about taking over. Is that fair?
I was gonna stop you, I was gonna
Okay.
break in, I was
Okay,
ready,
sorry.
but we got it right.
Yeah.
They've all found places.
They're all found homes.
Yeah, one of them is, when I was there last week, was working something out with another facility, but, so far, the other people that are in there are pleased with their new home. They might not be pleased with the move, but they're pleased with the new home that they're gonna be in.
If we lease this out and we were to do it, we would wanna make sure it was in line with the educational goals that we have for our students and our family, and it would make sense to be in that building with us to really increase collaboration in the services that we provide our families, which is why we wanna be real careful about setting up a structure that it is a nonprofit, someone that works with us, and can actually aid in our services to families.
What's the main, the main entrance? That's the front of the building right next to the Family Resource?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
That's those doors right there.
What'll end up happening is that as the day goes, as we move in there, the flow of the main entrances of our people are gonna be over there on the top of the page by Haynes Lumber, the street there. And then they'll have access, because we're gonna have access controls, the bus drivers and the maintenance workers, where they park their vehicles in the back, which is on the right side, or on the front, which is on the left side. They'll have access to get in to any of those doors. Not all of them, but a lot of them.
Do we have any plans for any kind of parking lot improvements?
Not right now. They just sealed it just recently. So it would just be, maintenance things that we would do with it. But we have a few things we gotta do in the back to get it. There's a lot of room back there, and so we're gonna get in there and clean it up when we get the keys.
I will say, I was pulling it up, and Don, please correct me if I'm wrong. We did include some money in when we were budgeting this out, and we will most likely have the budget amendment, because we're pulling this from fund balance, for the board in March, maybe, Angel? Maybe, yep. So we're gonna work on that, and there's still work to do, but we did include money in, our budget for some minor improvements, of course, furniture, fixtures, some technology needs. So that's all been included in the price that we budgeted out, along with the price of the building.
And there's enough room for all the buses to park in the back.
We still have buses at the buildings.
Right.
But they're, the buses that we have at the current shop, there'll be plenty of room. There'll be, should be more room,
Okay,
yes. The sun will be in the front,
sure.
yeah.
And from an operational issue, this is a conversation we've had a lot. It actually works in our favor to have buses parked at our schools across town versus all in one location.
But we can house them if we need.
If we had to pull them all in there, we could fit them, it would be Tetris, but it would get them.
So construction, timetable
For,
or just the renovations and
the big one would be technology. Once the technology gets done, and April has been on the front end of that a long time ago, because the people that we would be relying on, seems like they need a lot of advance notice. And she started on that right when we started the conversation. And so, once we get that in, we could, like I said, several weeks ago, we could move in and operate.
Yeah.
So the only thing we gotta do right away to get in there is that little arrow, the arrow right in the middle of the page. There's already a door there, if you remember when we visited.
Right.
We just gotta open it up, and once we open that up, here we go. The rest of them are gonna be, we're gonna wait a while, to see where the natural, daily life is before we open some of that up. And they're not load-bearing walls.
Could we say this is a dream come true?
Yes.
I think so. It's gonna be something else. The surplus, those things, I got a system in my mind. Now, whether it plays out that way, I'm hopeful that we do, but the organization and utilization of surplus, and then being able to store some things, and the principals want some desks. We can actually say, hey, we got a good set of desks right here, or a good set of chairs, stored up, we just pull it down and bring it to the school. That's the plan.
Just a quick question about the family resource area, what that would be.
I'm gonna let Lisa talk about, that's her area.
So right now, all of our, we got a donation last week, a large donation. What we have to do now is kind of like put it everywhere. So all of our laundry detergent, toilet paper, and all that kind of stuff went to Case and Lane because they actually have a storage space for us, and the social workers are able to access it there. So it will take, as you look at the place, it's a front entrance, all of our backpack food will be moved there. The tables, the church will start meeting there to do all the backpack food. And then, the social workers will have a set area to do, their food and other necessities. Also storage for store indigent care, items. So it'll just allow us to, it will not be open to the public.
That's what I
I'm
was
sorry, as I'm sitting here talking, I'm like, I think what you're asking me is, will it be open to the public? It will not. It will be a place where we can store it and get it out to our families.
Got it. I just wondered if it was a family resource center like we used to have
No,
at schools.
no, I had to think about what you actually asked while I was talking. But like our mobile, our new van will be
Right.
there, so the book bus will be housed there as well, so when we go out with everything, it's just gonna give us a central location that Jennifer will manage, but, the social workers will be in and out, and our guidance counselors will be in, anyone who needs to be there will have key access.
I think that's probably the most exciting thing when we bought the building, we weren't thinking about, because as she said, if our social workers need something right now, they may have to go to Case and Lane to get this for a family. We have stuff in one room here, we have stuff in the warehouse, they're just running all over the place trying to gather stuff for families. And the other thing that's really important is, we got a huge shipment from Amazon last week of donations, just to have a place for it to go, that we can see what's in there, can divide it up, and most importantly, can then get it out to families. That's what we wanna do.
Yeah, and that was one of those where we accepted the Amazon delivery just so we would know what we could look forward to and whether, because you have to sign up to say, yes, we have the ability to accept this and get it out. So that was a very interesting weekend. Yeah,
See, it's just kind of a blind,
it's a
here's
blind.
some extra stuff.
Yes, but it was great. I mean, it was great. It was lots of laundry detergent. Imagine a case of laundry detergent where one of them has been poked and leaked.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, well, okay, so that's what I got to, we washed a lot of laundry detergent, it's like, so here's the rest of them, like there'd be an 8-pack and one of them had a hole, so the 7 of them were great, but they couldn't resell them, so it was just it was a journey. We had a whole case of Nutella for our backpack food. I mean, it was great, it was just one of those where we just don't have that space to really do it, but we will, and I think when we have that space, it's just gonna allow us to get more and more of those things for our families. But
Very good, I'm looking forward to it. All right, next item.
Yeah, the next item on our update is discussion of board policy 4.403 on library materials. This was asked to be put on the board for discussion of this policy. Before the board gets into discussion, I did ask Ms. Arnett to kind of review our current board policy, which really covers how materials end up in our library, so I'll turn it over to you.
So good evening. Just wanted to kind of give you a little bit of update of where we are with our librarians, since we did have the book that was challenged. Ms. Bush and I are actually going to be training our librarians this coming Friday, where we're going to take a deep dive into policy 4.403 along with AD 4.303.1. I think there's still some questions around what it looks like, what the process is, who that involves, and so forth. So we want to make sure we're very clear on that policy, as well as policy 4.4001, where selection of instructional materials other than textbooks. So we want to just make sure we're going step by step, line by line on this, so that everyone is aware of what, the current climate is and what our policy and system is in place. Along with that, Ms. Bush will be sharing with the librarians some previous as landmark cases that Ms. Bush refers to. So we'll use some concrete examples, give some time for discussion, just so that they, are aware of things that could happen. And then we'll also cover that Age-Appropriate Materials Act, which was in 2022, as you are aware, where we have to make public our collection of library books. So that's kind of where we are as far as the training of the librarians. Just want to kind of go over that with you, that we will be spending some time Friday, again, going through, answering any questions that they have, and making sure they know the criteria and the systems in place. Ms. Bush, anything you want to add? Okay. Maybe anyone have questions around that?
I would like for you, if you don't mind, telling the board what you told me about how they find out what books are where. This list that somebody can get to.
So all of our library collections are posted online, and I think that's what you're referring to, please correct me if I'm not. Per state law, all of our library collections are posted online for the public to access. So, obviously in Rutherford County, the idea of books and what books are in the library is, something that's been talked about a lot in our community, as well as communities across the state. So it is our understanding that, there are groups that are going school by school to look at library collections and look for books. So that's information we've been given in that aspect, as far as, why people maybe outside of our district are bringing book challenges. The other question that came up, I think, when we first started talking about this, is who has the responsibility to order library books as they go into our library. And as our policy now stands, that is the job of the school librarian. They have the degree in library science, and it is their job to select the books, to catalog those books, and to put those books on the shelf. I think when Ms. Arnett talks about the training, again, I think it's just a great time for us to come back together and talk about, in the current climate around books in the community, to make sure our librarians have the information, make sure they understand. Again, they have it, but just kind of a refresher training. Let's make sure you understand the Age Appropriate Act. Let's make sure you understand, how we handle challenges. I'm one to say, we have a process for challenging books, and I think that's a good thing. We're a very diverse community. We're a diverse community that represents diverse students and diverse families. And I think part of the reason why we have this policy in place is so if there's confusions or questions, to go through the process. And that's why our process is there. It's worked well for us. And so just also making sure our librarians understand what they need to do should they get a book challenge, what their next steps are, and how we work through that process.
I'm still boiling on the inside on how John approaches those things. it could have been done so simple, except one person wanted a grandstand and a TV camera and music. Could have gone to the librarian and said, Amanda, you didn't make this book. That's it. But no, anyway.
So do our librarians need more support as far as, you know, just day-to-day operations and, book selection or any, I mean, any of that? I mean, do our librarians need more support? Cause that's a heavy load to carry.
I mean, I think anybody would always say, you know, they could always use more support, but I think our librarians do a really good job of book selection. I think we just go back and reiterate, know your collection, right? Like, if you have a picture book, know what that picture book is about, especially if it's marketing for everyone. It's just important, and we'll do this in the training to make sure that you have checked, resources, reviews around the book. So I've not heard from any librarians, that they need.
They're not feeling the pressure of.
I say that today they're not, but Friday,
Friday,
they're
Friday,
different.
yeah.
I may, you know, and I'm happy to bring back to the board, you
Yeah.
know, after we meet, with them Friday.
I just wanna make sure that we are supporting them
Absolutely.
the way they do.
Completely agree. And that is our, you know, that's our goal always.
But is it a possibility that a librarian or anybody could order a group of books, say from the Caldecott list or something, and not know what each book says until they get them? And then maybe not have the time to process all 300 or 400, I don't know, that's what I'm wondering. You would think that if it's on the Caldecott list or another approved list, that they'd all be okay, but
My hope, so yes, I think that could happen. My hope would be that as they're processing them through, you know, as they do that, there's no time limit on that unless you're opening a library, right? That they would, you know, the time is taken, and I think they do that, that they read the book, you know, at least know around what that book is, or where to sign. But they can buy and bundle to answer your question. But you will have, heard.
Ms. Arnett, can you remind us about the scale policy of a book being on a shelf and not checked out and sort of rolling out of the library?
Sure, so every year, librarians do go through and do their inventory. And if there is a book that has not been checked out over a period of time, then they do something called weed, and weed that book out. So that is something that they do yearly.
they don't have to go through the process of
They just
removing the book,
remove it.
they can just move it
They
out.
can just remove it from their, inventory.
The book that was challenged, the book that was challenged, had it ever been checked out?
No, they've been there for 2 years, is my understanding, so.
Oh, I'm
we
very well
really
aware.
should've weeded out.
I just want it on the record.
Probably should. So
it
what's
would've-
the
it
time?
would've- I'm sorry,
Okay.
it would have been removed at the end of the year, right?
We don't have a specific time and policy, it just says to the extent that like a book has not garnered enough interest, a library can weed out, and that's, they do learn that in their library science program. I know science people, but school librarians, very intimately familiar with it, unfortunately. Safe program, fun, money, there's everything.
Same here, even at, TSU
Yeah.
library.
It's a lawyer thing apparently. But I mean, same thing, weeding's a big part, even in TSU, they're always weeding the collection, it's just something librarians are trained.
There's just not a time frame on it.
Yeah, there's no rigid rule.
It also came to my mind though that people are complaining about this book, this one book that John was complaining about, yet he had to support it because he had to go out and buy it.
He made me give it back.
Huh?
He made me give it back. They gave it to me and said, I want it back.
You gave it back to him?
Well, the police officer was kind enough to suggest that
Well,
was.
I mean, he had to buy it somewhere.
He did, as a matter of fact.
Well, it's a
It's
prop
on-
for
it's
him.
on Amazon.
We'll take it.
I understand, maybe he take it off of his tax. I'm sorry to get off on that soapbox, I was probably. Okay. Other business.
Yeah, well, just a few, yes, some directors updates and then, we'll do the other business. before we go to our closed session. First of all, Mr. Richardson asked at the retreat about federal funds, and we put together what I call a one-pager on the federal funds this year for the district. This is kind of a quick snapshot that I've divided into 3 areas. One is really the program, because there's a lot of different programs that provide us federal funds. Next to that, I put what it actually pays for, and then the third column is the actual allocation we received this year. So if you work backwards and go to the back page with the graph on it, you can see for our FY25 year, we're getting almost about $11.8 million in federal funds. About half of that is school nutrition. So of course, we provide free breakfast and lunch for every student in the district. So about half of those funds fund our school nutrition program 100%. We are not putting any local dollars into school nutrition. It pays for their staff, their salary, their food, all of that. Correct, Daniel? We're not putting any local money, just making sure. Even our farm to school program falls under that as well, coordinated school health. You can see for the rest of it, you're looking at Title I, Title II, Title III, Title IV. All those are going toward things like our historically underserved schools, our Title I schools, our English language learners. You also see funds for special education students, funds for after-school tutoring through ESP. Our comm coaches are currently being, 9 of our, how many comm coaches? 14 comm coaches are being funded through a grant fund, and as well as our homeless population receives McKinney-Vento dollars. So all of that is what we are spending our federal funds on. Overwhelmingly, I tried to list the number of staff associated, and that's really what I wanted the board to see. When we're talking about federal funds, overwhelmingly, it's paying for people. Whether it's additional academic interventionists or EAs for Title I schools, math coordinators for teacher prep, system-wide technology instructions, our family liaisons that speak Spanish and Arabic that work with those families, our special education staff. So overwhelmingly, it pays for people. And on that back, I just put a little graph so you can see what percentage it is being paid for. But I'm happy to answer any questions. I think the conversation we had at the retreat and the question I received at the retreat would be, if we lost federal funds, what would the impact be? Overwhelmingly, you can see it would be in staff. And the conversation and the decisions the board would have to make is which of these additional positions, because that's really what they are, additional positions would we want to try and fit into our GP budget, and how would it have that impact on GP? So this is really just for your information. I have a couple other announcements, and I'm happy to answer any questions you have on that.
I just want to share something, and I don't know, maybe everybody got the same email, but I got an email from a teacher just this afternoon worried about this. She's in a position that's funded on this sheet, and just was already concerned about what will we do, and just wanted to make sure that we are thinking about this. I'm glad we are, so thank you for this, so I can, at least tell her that. But just to share, these are real people, and they are worried about.
Yeah, because thank you for that, maybe going to dig a little bit. And I've got to turn CNN off, got to turn the news off, because it's making me crazy. But the question that's coming to mind now is, the new administration has a Department of Government Efficiency that is going around to the different departments. Department of Education, I'm hearing, is going to be next on their site. And what they're looking for in areas of cutting, and this is what concerns me, is that they want to focus on anything that looks like DEI, which is a bad word now. And so my question is along those lines, because, and we wouldn't know necessarily what they would consider that, but when you talk about Arabic translators, Spanish translators, things like that, do we think that could possibly, or are we thinking along the lines that could possibly be looked at as one of those programs? And they would want to cut that, even if they don't cut the whole Department of Education. But when they're going in to say, well, what are some things that we could cut that are promoting this whole DEI initiative? those are some of the things that are concerning to me, because it could be looked at as, you know, I just saw, I think, Channel 17, there's a law that they're proposing now where, driver's tests can only be given in English, you know, because that's I guess it's a diversity thing, I don't know. So that's, I just wanna put it on our radars, you know, because you're very right, that what we're looking at is not just numbers, we're looking at people that serve our kids. So that's my concern, and just, maybe if we just put it out there and kind of keep it on our, like I say, on our radar to know, cause I'm looking at it, Title III, 1.5 positions, community outreach liaisons for Arabic community, 2.5 for, Hispanic community. Those are needed, because it gets our kids involved and it gets them educated and known and appreciated and taught and all that good stuff that we talked about. So I just wanted to kind of put that out there so that we can know what this really is gonna look like. See? I think I stick my
Thank you, Dr. Steve.
I can trust him a lot.
Mr. Campbell, well, are we ready to move on from this topic?
Yes, I have a couple more director's updates, but I'll,
Well,
when we're ready.
I'd like to say this before the update,
Yeah.
if that's okay. So, can we go back to the library thing? We just kind of went. through the
Procedurally, I'm not sure that we can.
Why not?
We can vote on it.
Director's
We didn't
update.
vote on it, versus a discussion. Okay, so, all right, so on the list, when I looked at it on my laptop, I didn't bring a laptop, and I don't have a copy of it, but it's our policy, our current policy. I guess this is a question for Lauren. There was like a number 1, 2, 3, and 4 of, you got it? Okay. Maybe I should- Yes. Okay. So up the top, it's given, material shall be suitable for and consistent with, you know, when you come about. Okay, number 4 is the one that I felt like needed a little more meat to it. The collection as a whole shall offer a variety of viewpoints. That's very broad. Really and truly, I mean, that book that we pulled could be considered a variety of viewpoints. So what I'm just saying is, could we somehow, fix this so that it narrows it down just a little bit? I'm not against varying viewpoints at all, of course I'm for that, but I think this just opens up, it's so broad, it's so broad. All right, does anybody agree with me or not, or am I crazy?
I'm sorry, what part was?
It's number 4, did you not have it either, is there another one on here?
So I will say,
Pass it down to Jimmy.
so, you know, we talked a lot about different policies and TSBA policies. This is the TSBA model policy, but I do know this language came from the seminal case, which is the plurality decision from the Supreme Court, Island Trees versus Pico, we call it Pico, and what basically what the Supreme Court said is, you know, the school board, and the school district do have a legitimate interest in, regulating specific types of books. However, it cannot regulate books based on viewpoint. So to the extent that there is a reason for us to take a book out related to, because we don't necessarily like what the book says, right? That would be potentially a violation of a First Amendment right that students have to have access to that book in the school. So that's where that language is coming from. Again, though, it's really hard, I think there are 8 different decisions, or 8 different opinions within that one decision, which is why it's a plurality decision, by the Supreme Court, so it's hard to, and I totally get where TSBA was coming from with that. Very hard to sum that up in one line, but I do think that there has gotta be some viewpoint language that is contained within the policy based on that, right? We don't want to discriminate based on viewpoint, and really it's not the place of the government to do so. Any concerns that we have related to the appropriateness of the book need to be related to what the committee has basically said, was that this book is probably beyond what the students could access based on academics. I don't know all that language, but that's Sherry's world. Or that it's just obviously on some language.
Related to curriculum, something like that, or is that too strong?
See, to me, you
I
know,
would take fun books out.
yeah, cause I think,
No, not fun, but yeah.
yeah, but I think it needs to stay in there because other than that, when you start narrowing it down, then the discussion turns to, well, how do we narrow? What do we cut? I think variety of viewpoint is one of the things that's in there. It's not the only thing. So variety of viewpoint, yes, and then it still has to be within age appropriate, and it still has to be not, what's the test? Because I'm not a lawyer and I don't remember.
I see Karen's point on both of what you're saying, viewpoint and age appropriate. This one book was age appropriate supposedly for 4 through 8. 4 years old. 4 years, yes, for me, 4 years old. So, but it also gave a variety of viewpoint which fit in that category.
But it would need to check all the boxes.
All
You don't just,
four.
it needs to check every box.
It's not
It's not just viewpoint, it's gotta check every box. So if viewpoint has to stay in there, because that's one of the boxes it needs to check, is my point. Because other than that, then we really do, in my opinion, lean toward going towards censorship, because, well, it doesn't match our viewpoint. Because I think, in my never to be able to pick, we're facing a lot of that with Rutherford County. A lot of this is almost viewpoint discrimination, because I don't agree with this, and I'll go further, since we're in a meeting that's not necessarily.
Well, don't put me in the same
I'm not
box with
putting you in
them.
there, I'm not putting you there.
Just won't put that
But
in.
it is,
Yeah,
and
not
the gentleman that came and spoke, that had public, comment, he was expressing his viewpoint. He felt that God only made male and female. That's great, that's his viewpoint, but it is unfair of you to put that viewpoint on everybody in Murfreesboro City. That's your viewpoint.
But his
So-
violation was that was not on the agenda.
Well, yeah, I got that, but I'm pulling him out for a specific example, which is when we start kind of going down the road of viewpoint and what we think as far as what viewpoint is valid and what viewpoint is not valid. Because, yes, we are, and I'm not gonna be on the soapbox long, so y'all indulge me. Yes, we are allegedly a Christian nation, I get all of that, but what version of Christianity? Because Butch is Baptist, and I am definitely not Baptist. So what he feels is,
If I can talk to you long enough, I'll change.
you might. What he feels like Christianity looks like is not the same as what I think, you know? So we have to be careful when we get into narrowing viewpoints down, because then, maybe not. So just to make it available, because the other thing is, making something available and pushing something are two different things. McDonald's advertises because they got them on every block, but they don't force me to go in there. You know, it's there. If I want McDonald's, you know, I can go, but it's not forced on us. The book that we pulled is a perfect example. It's been on the shelf for 2 years, and nobody bothered to check it out. Nobody cared about this book until somebody cared. You know, and if he had not said anything, it wouldn't have garnered our attention. It probably would still be on the shelf, because it just didn't get any attention. And sometimes I really think that the more oxygen we give to this thing, this whole book banning thing, the more it's gonna grow. We'll never get out of this quagmire. I thought that COVID was gonna kill us with all of the stuff that was coming up. But this whole book and who can read what and what's on the shelf and banned books and all of this stuff, and it's just getting more and more and more traction, and we're becoming more and more and more divided over some stuff that some of these kids, they'll never check out some of these books. They'll never read them. But I'm off my soapbox now.
Mr. Simmons, you'll be amazed, there's something called the internet, and on the
Right,
internet,
right.
it's fascinating, there's all sorts of terrible, horrible, nasty, bad things. Can you imagine that?
Are you serious?
They have access on their phones.
Not at all.
Blows my mind.
Well, let me say this is what I wanted. I'm not saying that I gotta have number 4 taken off or nothing like that, that's not what I'm saying. I wanted the discussion.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to see how y'all felt about it, and it is listed as a discussion of library materials on the agenda, and that's what I wanted. This is what I wanted. So now, after you've spoken, and you, I see what you're saying, that that's exactly what I wanted, because sometimes I sit at my house and I read this stuff, and it's just me. And I'm thinking, do other people feel differently than me, or is it just me?
Yeah.
That's what I wanted.
And this is when we get to talk about it, cause we can't talk about it
Yes.
on the phone or nothing like that.
Yes, this is what I wanted, so, I mean, if y'all feel that, you know, that is sufficient enough, then I'm gonna have to go with that, because we are a team.
Very well.
That's what we are.
Well, I learned a long time ago from an old time former politician. And what he told me was, he said, Butch, you never get into a debate with the man who buys ink by the barrel. I'm believing now you also don't get into in a debate by a man who has a captive audience once or twice a week.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
Something else I wanna say, Barbara and I went to the Legal Institute, Franklin, Cool Springs, for the past 2 days. Big ballroom full of, school board members, and the question was asked, how many of you in here have had a book challenged? And I want you to know, were we the only ones? This is only a big deal here, people. Seriously, nobody in the state of Tennessee is dealing with this. Nobody raised their hand. Rutherford County was not there.
Oh, that's right.
I don't think people raise their hands.
Do you
Yeah, I
think,
think
do you
they-
think they just didn't want it knitted? Well, that's
I don't
stupid.
think, Williamson County has
Were they there? I didn't see them. But anyway, I was looking around like, are we the only ones? It was crazy.
Well, we are right in the middle of
Well, it wasn't a lot, I can
a
tell you that.
system who has had massive amount of ink printed with them in mind. We all know that, it's been going on for some time.
Mr. Campbell,
Yes,
Ms.
ma'am.
Price had a comment.
Yes, ma'am.
Hey, girl, you gotta
She was
speak
waiting
up.
for me.
You
You can't see, this setup, she's in the corner.
gotta jump in.
You know you're gonna have to stand up.
Listen, I just had a question. So basically, this training that you will be doing with the librarians is not to discourage from them from getting certain books. It's basically to educate them so that way the book that they choose, they can stand behind and they can make a choice that is diverse, that does have a variety. That even if they have books in their library, they all have like one vein and say, you know what, maybe I do need to get some different viewpoints in here. You know, like diversify my catalog a little bit, I can do that. It's not a discouragement, it's just an open conversation so that they know what they are doing and why they are doing it.
And it
Just a
aligns,
clarity.
and it aligns with the policy.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we, you know, I love my themes for my presentations, but the theme for this week is landscape, the legal landscape for school librarians. I don't care if they're called media specialists, I can't do it, school librarians. And that's one of the reasons I was able to speak to PICO, because I just read it. So, we are gonna be talking about case law, the precedent of case law, the laws within the state of Tennessee, the ever-changing climate around books, and then, you know, how that impacts basically the alignment with the policy, where our policy comes from, where our procedure comes from, because all of that is derived from state law.
Any other questions or comments?
I have 2 quick updates remaining, and then we'll go into our closed session. One, just FYI, the legislative session, of course, is going on. There's roughly, the filing deadline has passed. There's roughly about 288 educational bills that we're kind of keeping our eye on. But I think you'll see that begin to, there hasn't been a whole lot in committees the last 2 weeks, but I think that'll pick up in the next few weeks. The governor's state of the school was last night. He does have some additional educational funding going in there. I have not seen like a breakdown exactly outside the big talking points. He does talk about a 3% increase for teacher pay raises, which would be great. Last year, he also raised the base around 3% in TISA, which is something I'm hoping is gonna be in there. Right now, the base pay for teachers by law is $44,500. This would take next year the base pay requirement to $47,000 to be his goal of $50,000 by the end of his term. As a reminder, we are already at $50,000, okay, but we would still get those additional funds. We would just put more toward that. And that $50,000 pay really puts us in very good comparison with our surrounding districts. A lot of these, most districts that are paying that base pay amount are at the more rural areas across Tennessee. So just know, we're hearing there may be some additional funds for public education, but I haven't seen what those are gonna be spelled out with. One of the things we do know, and again, I just wanna flag this for the board, we'll have to have conversation probably during the budget session about this, is the voucher bill did pass, as we know. One of the parts of those voucher bills, as we talked a little bit at the retreat, is a $2,000 bonus for teachers. Again, I have a meeting on Tuesday with the state, and then I'll be actually in Nashville tomorrow, with superintendents for the superintendent's legislative conference tomorrow. I'm hoping to get more details. What I do know is, according to the law, the board will have to pass a resolution to accept the funds for the $2,000 bonuses for the teachers. So in the past, when there's been teacher bonuses for certain things, that money has come to us. There is the requirement that the school board pass a resolution, not in support of the voucher bill, but to accept the funds associated with it. So I wanna put that on there. We will draft a resolution for the board to consider, unless the board does not want us to. We will look at that. I think we have to have that done by June 1st, so we have a little bit of time. And hopefully, I would prefer we don't consider a resolution until I get some more clarity on who does this include, who does it not include, and what the board's direction is for that as well. So I just wanna put that on your radar.
And today and yesterday, we also learned that, you know, in that resolution, we can still state our opposition to the voucher bill, but the mass portion of that resolution has to be accepting that $2,000.
Right.
So we have to beg for it.
When does this term end? Is it 27?
Those are all my updates.
Anybody got anything else to do before?
I would strongly suggest that, we walked through probably 80 different, bills the last couple of days, and all of you get those through GSBA, so I would strongly recommend that you just at least scan through them and know what's out there.
And I know the board, thank you, Barbara and Cam, for going. As I said, I'll be in Nashville the next 2 days with our legislative conference, going through most of those kind of same issues, so I'll keep the board updated on things I learned as well.
Anything else come before this board before we adjourn this session? All in favor of adjourning this session?